Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Civilian Dependent Wife Demands Salute Because of Her Husband's Rank. There are a handful of rules to saluting in the American military. The when, why, and how is drilled into you from boot camp until the day you leave. Even the orders in which the salutes are rendered have meaning. When it comes to vehicles, there are helpful insignia and stickers to indicate if it's an officer, such as a colored sticker located on the front windshield. My base was small enough where it was everyone's job at some point to do sentry duty at the front gate, which had housing for military families. Sentry duty was pretty basic. You'd stop every vehicle, check IDs and then wave them through. If they were an officer, you'd see it coming with those colored stickers, and after verifying the identity of the officer, you'd salute and send them on their way. One day while on duty, I approached a vehicle with an officer's sticker and there was only the officer's wife driving in the vehicle. I returned her ID, wished her a nice day and waved her through. Pausing with a stern look, "Where's my salute, Petty Officer Citizen Alpha?" Now Karen here was wife to a higher ranking officer and has clearly fallen under the impression people are saluting her somewhere along the way. Some of the junior enlisted might have even been saluting her, as they're pretty easy to bully and more prone duck-ups. I politely replied, "Ma'am, salutes are only rendered to commissioned officers." Angrily pointing her chubby little fingers at the front of her windshield towards her husband's officer sticker, "I have a sticker and you need to salute the sticker." Curtly I continued, "I'm afraid that sticker is not an officer either." Frustrated, she pulled through and left my post. My cover guy, the guy keeping me safe with a big gun, and I watched her drive down the street and pull right into the administrative building with the top brass and huffed into the building as quickly as her soft shitty body would take her. We exchange a look between us with wry smiles, knowing exactly where this is probably going. Later that day we get a new official base-wide mandate. From here forward all enlisted will salute vehicle stickers of officers regardless of who's in the vehicle. Roger that. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. It's worth noting that when you salute an officer as enlisted, you do it first, and you hold that salute until you are saluted in return and they lower theirs. Only then do you lower your salute. It signals that you're saluting them, and they're replying. Additionally, when saluting a group of officers, you generally direct your salute and greeting to the highest ranking individual. Now, as far as I know, this stupid sticker salute order has no accommodation for how a 2004 Toyota Camry fits into the officer's pecking order. Additionally, if the car is unoccupied, it's not like that sticker is removed. After that order came through, we all began saluting stickers. Personally, I'd direct my salute to the sticker. I would also prioritize sticker salutes over officers. Let me tell you, walking through parking lots was a blast as I saluted empty cars on my way to wherever. More and more people saw me doing it, and more people started doing it. Not long after the order was publicly rescinded, this hilariously had the balancing effect of never rendering a salute to anyone but a clearly known officer, cementing Karen never getting her unearned salutes. Next one is titled, How Am I the Slow One? Decades ago, I had worked summers as a high schooler with a truck washing company. In the industry, there were 3 types of wash rigs you could find in our state. We were a brush washing company, acid and steam being the other 2 types, and they ran one-man crews. Think of it as a big mobile power wash setup with 2 500-gallon tanks, one for soap and one for rinse, pump, hoses, brushes and all the other sundries needed. All mounted on a large flatbed pickup with no air conditioning. We would drive our rig to our client's site and wash their trucks. Typically, semi-tractor trailers, bobtails, and all the various types those represented. The last summer I worked there, I had graduated high school and the other high schoolers had been dropped as the owner was preparing to expand into another city, county, and he was working on the company image. He had selected a guy in his late 20s to run the routes in the new county while he ran the other. This was before cell phones, so you were on your own and needed to know how to handle anything that came along. In a crew, you had a sprayer and the brushes. The crew chief, unless he was teaching someone else, was the sprayer and drove the truck. The sprayer would start the wash by soaping the tractor and/or trailer while the other 1 or 2 guys would follow behind brushing the dirt off. We had a super long handle push broom and a standard push broom along with the wheel brushes. If the weather allowed it, the sprayer would soap the entire rig. If it was too hot, only one side at a time. They would yell, "Switch," right before they got to the end of soaping, and a brusher would run over to the truck and flip the valves to rinse before returning to their brushing duties. After you finished brushing, you took care of the tanks, paperwork, and prepared to switch back to soap and do it all over again. It was a physically demanding job as a brusher. You had to be able to move fast. 3-man crews were the norm as it was a lot of work involved. 2-man crews were the most difficult as you were alone in brushing and running the paperwork, pump, tank, water refill. Normally the sprayer would help with all of that as it was very difficult to do by a single brusher. The sprayer was responsible for the pace and making sure everything was done right, along with presenting the paperwork to the client if needed. Something the owner always did himself if a client wanted it at the end of the job. Only the owner ran those sites that needed the paperwork delivered. I had never worked with this new boss before as he had only been training with the owner, and then he worked with a select crew of 2 brushes that would be assigned to him initially in the new county. I could see why the boss thought he would be a good front man for the new business. He looked good, fit, and for image he was a good choice. This day his normal 2 brushes were unavailable and I was selected to work with him because I was experienced and had run crews myself in previous summers. Being the only brusher didn't bother me as I knew how. I don't know if the new boss knew that or not. I'm not sure if the new boss had ever been in a 2-man crew before. One of the things that were the mantra of the owner was that the sprayer sets the pace of the job. They oversaw how fast things went. As a crew chief, you had to make sure everything was done right. New boss and I started out okay, getting to know each other. I did my job and he soon found that he didn't need to tell me to do anything unless it was something specific that he wanted. I don't know what soured him because I never disrespected him, and I followed his instructions. Maybe it was because as the day went on, he slowed down and I had a lot more time to stand there waiting on him to finish rinsing before starting the next truck. Not that his fast pace early in the day was difficult for me either. He finally blew up at me at the last client site. Complained I was slow and lazy and why wasn't I moving faster? He accused me of being incompetent and why couldn't I do better? I reminded him that he never had to wait on me, nor did he have to do anything other than spray. I had taken care of recording the trucks washed, the tanks, the hoses, and not once did I have to rework an area of any of the trucks. He got even more angry. I'm not sure what he was expecting here. I was not intimidated by him in the least. Why, he was going slow because I was slow. No, that's not how it works as the sprayer sets the pace. Well, now he's going to show me how slow I am. He's going to go full speed and soak my behind because I wouldn't be able to keep up. Sure, do your best. We only had about 5 tractor trailers to go. He went into overdrive. I never broke a sweat. Still did it all, and he was so angry at the end that he threw the sprayer on the ground, grabbed the paperwork out of the truck, and walked the long walk across the parking yard to the main office to deliver it. I grinned to myself as I prepped the truck to leave. Maybe he would learn from this and become a better crew chief. I don't know why he was taking him so long delivering the paperwork, so I drove the truck up between the 2 doors he could use to go into the office, parked and shifted over to the passenger side to wait. When he finally came out, he got scared for a moment because he didn't see me still down where he left me, only realizing where I was when he turned the other direction. The doors were 20 yards apart and I was parked between them out of the fire zones where we always parked when going into the office. Now he's yelling at me again, claiming I had attempted to drive off without him and only realized that if I did I would have been fired, etc. No, I drove up so you didn't have to walk all that way back. Eventually he stopped yelling and went silent as he drove back to the shop. Fine by me. The next day I'm assigned to work with the owner alone. This was a little unusual as we typically didn't work together as I was more of a help on the lesser experienced teams. Sure enough, the boss wants to know what happened and why I had tried to drive off, leaving the other boss guy behind. I shut that down quick and relayed what had happened. The owner knew me well enough that he had to hear my side of the story. I had him laughing with me at the end. I should mention that at that site, the owner would drive right where I had parked to go in and drop the paperwork off, so it wasn't like the new boss wouldn't have known where we parked. I fell out of contact with the owner after that summer, so I never found out how all that worked out after I left. I worked 3 more weeks before heading to college. During those 3 weeks I heard a few folks bought into this idiot's version of events but came around when I presented the other side of the story, and as others came up with their own stories. After all, if I had truly done what he claimed I had done, I would have been fired by the owner because of the whole new image thing. So which version did they want to believe? Next one is titled, Withhold My Pay If I Don't Do Your Survey. I'll do your survey. Where I worked, we had these online surveys we would have customers do. Of course no customer wants to do some dig a hole online survey, so we almost never saw them return to us. Eventually the owner loses his God-blessed mind at the fact that our surveys aren't coming back, and decides that we, the employees, will start doing the surveys so that corporate sees good reports. When we don't do these surveys, he decides to tell us he will not give us our paycheck unless we do the survey and give the code. Mama didn't raise a fool, but she raised a petty witch. I took a bunch of the empty survey slips, did them all online, on different devices no less, and gave the worst ratings you could give, made up fake situations that happened, just made them seem like the crap of the earth. This went on for a year without them noticing until I left. Good riddance. Next one is titled, Paranoid Flatmate Thought I Was Cheating Her. This happened 10 years ago when I was studying abroad in Spain. I had rented a 4-bedroom apartment and then advertised the other rooms, trying to find nice flatmates. The first 2 were great, but I was struggling to find a 4th one. There were some people interested, but I just had a bad feeling about them. In the end, I decided to accept this Russian girl, against my better judgment. She was trouble from the beginning, always in a bad mood, always acting as if the world owed her something. She said many times she hated Spain, and I'm thinking, why are you here then? She always seemed paranoid that she was being cheated by everyone. For example, once she found out I didn't pay the same amount as the other 3, obviously I paid less, I was the one who found the flat, it was my name on the contract and all bills, I was liable for all damages, they weren't my friends, I didn't have a contract with them, it was all casual. So she told me it was illegal to sublet and that if I didn't start paying the same, she'd call the police. I told her it was only illegal if the owner of the property wasn't aware of it. She actually found the number of the owner and called him to complain about me. Luckily he's a cool guy and told her, I have my contract with him. Whatever you agreed with him is your problem. I only know this because he called me, saying, that girl is trouble. Anyway, this long year comes to an end, and we all need to go back to our countries. Before that, we need to calculate our final expenses. The way it works in Spain, they only check your gas and water twice a year, I think. In the meantime you pay an estimate, and when they check they adjust and you either pay more or receive money back. To simplify the calculations, I had been the one paying all the bills every month. Then once they checked the gas and water and we had the correct number, I'd be able to calculate exactly how much they owed me. Trying to avoid any complaints from the Russian girl, who I was sure would think I was cheating her somehow, I made the clearest table possible, every bill was attached to it. The final thing you need to know for this to make sense, is that halfway through the year, a friend of mine found himself with nowhere to live. I had an extra mattress, so I told him he could stay with me until he found a new place. He only stayed for 3 weeks, in my room, but he is the tidiest person I know, so he was cleaning the apartment, he would surprise us with dinners, etc. My other 2 roommates actually told me we should kick the Russian out and have my friend move in permanently with us. Eventually he found a new place and left us. So, when I was calculating the expenses, I thought it would be nice to just deduct €10 from what each flatmate owed me, to compensate for the extra water, gas, electricity he spent. It was way generous, there's no way his presence added €30 to our bills, but I did it anyway. After doing that the final total was something like €304.52 per person. I told them to just round it down to €300, thinking I was the most generous landlord they'd ever find. Of course the Russian girl wasn't happy. She told me she didn't think it was fair that I was just guessing it, that my friend has stayed for almost a month, so I should recalculate it, but divide 1 month by 5 instead of 4. I was just rolling my eyes, like, it must be so exhausting being you. So I was like, okay, let's do it together, so you don't think I'm cheating you. She sat by me and we revised the accounts, and voila, by doing it her way, she now owed me more. It was just like €5 more, but of course I didn't round it down this time. I had her give me every last cent. When the world is dark and I'm depressed, one of my favorite memories to go back to is her face as she was handing me those final worthless coins. Next one is titled, Burning My Lieutenant. I was a deputy sheriff for 12 years, 7 of which were spent in the courts. By the time this incident happened, I had been promoted to the position of chief of the court division. At first, I reported directly to a captain who was the chief of operations of the sheriff's office, so he and I got along great, but then he moved on to greener pastures. Then I was informed I'd be reporting to a lieutenant who was the chief of the detective division. The lieutenant and I did not get along at all, and still to this day, almost 10 years since I retired, I utterly loathe him. One day, he decided to pay a visit to the checkpoint where my operations desk was located. He left, and came back about 20 minutes later with a write-up he expected me to sign. The reason I wasn't wearing the standard black clip-on tie the Division 1 was in charge of was supposed to wear. I told him I wouldn't wear their clip-on ties. He told me I had to, as our department policy required clip-on ties for safety, so people could not use our ties as a ligature to choke us to death. Several weeks before the encounter, I had purchased 4 or 5 regular ties, all in paisley prints, tied them into perfect length ties with double Windsor knot and a perfect crease coming out from just below the knot. Then I made a major modification to the ties. It just so happened I was wearing one of them as he made a hole of himself. As he stood there trying to get me to take and sign the write-up, I told him I refused and requested an appeal to the sheriff. It was the first time I opted a direct appeal for the sheriff to decide. He had me sit in the hall as he went to talk to the sheriff, surely to set me up for failure. Then I was asked to enter. I sat down, and the LT demanded I explain why I would not follow the black clip-on tie policy. The policy existed for safety, so people could not use our ties as a ligature to choke us to death. I knew what the policy said, because I wrote it. When the sheriff was first elected, he asked each division chief to write up their own policies and procedures. My predecessor had made some minor changes to the policies for people in my division, but I thought they were too restrictive and needed some changes to inspire creativity. I rewrote the policies for my division, and they were approved by the sheriff. I sat down and removed my tie clip located about halfway down my tie, then pulled on my tie, which easily detached. See, after I bought them, I put them on one by one and tied them so they had the perfect length and knot on the tie. I added an extra 2 inches to the neck size, cut the tie in half, and sewed in Velcro, which would easily become hidden at the back of the neck. The sheriff thought the idea was sound, so he allowed it. I then pointed out a glaring problem which my LT had caused. He made us wear lanyards with our department's initials repeatedly all the way around the lanyard, on which we would clip our agency employee identification to. The lanyards were pretty wide, about 2/3 of an inch wide, and made of multiple layers, as it could be worn reversibly. My LT spat out, "So?" At this point, I stood up and pulled as hard as I could on the lanyard, and as I knew would happen, it didn't budge at all, meaning our ties were safe, but the lanyard put us in danger of being choked, as they had no measure for quick release for safety. I didn't get a lot of chances to burn my LT, we really hated each other, but when I did, the burning glare of the sheriff staring at my LT was so worth it. It was a burning glare I'd see shot at my lieutenant several times, and with each one, I prayed our division would be taken from his purview. Just before I was forced into medical retirement, I really had developed 2 debilitating conditions. I got my wish. I got our judges to agree to a change in our uniforms, and without asking permission first, I had the deputies in my division to go to our uniform supplier to get measured. I did this on the premise we needed actual uniforms for special assignments, funerals for fallen officers and soldiers from the area, and most importantly, to help my deputies feel like deputies. I submitted a requisition request for 3 uniforms for each of my employees, and it was approved. This put us under the lieutenant serving as chief of the uniform division. Finally, someone I could actually get along with. I miss the job, but I don't miss my old lieutenant. Justice is a dish best served cold. Last one is titled, Taking Advantage of Someone on His Last Day in the Military? See how that goes for you. This happened to my dad a long time ago, but he loves to tell us the story. My dad was literally working the last day of his enlistment in the Navy. He worked in communications, but his supervisor decided to get some manual labor out of him on his last day by making my dad put down new tile in one of the mess halls. Since it was a direct order, he had to comply and do the job. He carefully laid down perfectly spaced tiles in the entire room. It took him the rest of the day, but he made sure that it was as perfectly lined up as humanly possible. Supervisor looks in the room, approves the job, closes the door and tells him he can go home. What he didn't realize is that my dad used absolutely no glue of any kind. I don't know what happened the next day when someone actually discovered what he did, but I am sure it didn't go well for the supervisor. He never heard anything about it, but was planning to play dumb and say he didn't know it needed glue. After all, it was a job he was never trained for. This was in the US in the 1970s. Thanks for listening.